Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. Imagine this. Roger Waters, the rebellious designer of Pink Floyd's most ambitious works, seated to unveil the negative aspects of his band years. However, he is not the main focus this time. Rather, it's on David Gilmour, the band's guitar virtuoso and vocalist behind many of their classic tunes. Waters talks candidly today about what he believes to be Gilmour's jealousies, insecurities, and personal and professional disputes that not only shattered their relationship, but also had an impact much beyond Pink Floyd's boundaries. Long before it was made public, the conflict between Waters and Gilmour was simmering. They had a complex creative dynamic. Waters was a brilliant songwriter who crafted somber, reflective tales. Gilmour's guitar playing, however, was what gave those tales their heartfelt impact. However, as Pink Floyd's popularity soared in the 1970s, their relationship started to fall apart because to conflicting goals and egos. The fissures were evident when The Wall in 1779 was being recorded. Waters assumed command and exercised almost complete authority over the project. Gilmour found it difficult to make room for his contributions, which led to a hostile, stressful atmosphere where every choice felt like a struggle. Waters perceived Gilmour's hesitation to adopt his vision as a sign of insufficient dedication, and Gilmour objected to Waters' controlling style. The two were hardly able to communicate by the time the final cut was made public in 1983. Gilmour's resentment went beyond music alone. It was intimate. According to reports, he was overshadowed by Waters' commanding presence in the band, and his mounting dissatisfaction showed itself in the form of last-minute arrangements, subtle cutting waves, solo modifications, and an omnipresent tension that made cooperation all but impossible. According to Waters, Gilmour's jealousy extended beyond their time in the band. After Waters left in 1985, Gilmour appeared committed to demonstrating that Pink Floyd could succeed without him. Although Gilmour's melodic genius was on display in albums like A Momentary Lapse of Reason and The Division Bell, they were also criticized for not having the depth and intellectual ambition that characterized the band's previous work. Waters saw this as confirmation that Pink Floyd needed his somber, analytical touch in order to really shine. Imagine the annoyance of being celebrated as a guitar legend, but feeling like your skill is always being written off as secondary. Gilmour used post-Waters Pink Floyd as a means of establishing his reputation. However, the shadow of their rivalry hung heavy, and every victory was marred by the silent question of whether it could ever compare to what the band had accomplished. As a unit, Gilmour's narrative is made more dramatic by his complex relationship with Pink Floyd's initial vocalist, Syd Barrett. Gilmour was brought in to fill the vacuum left by Barrett's departure from the band in 1968 due to his mental health and drug misuse problems. However, this change wasn't smooth. Barrett, who was already in a downward spiral, allegedly regarded Gilmour as a usurper and a rescuer who was filling in for him while attempting to keep the band going. Gilmour apologized for Barrett's treatment years later, but their relationship remained tense. Gilmour was left to deal with the guilt of what could have been done differently after Barrett's decline into solitude and final death in 2006. David Gilmour's reputation for meticulousness and an unrelenting dedication to perfection frequently clashed with his contemporaries' creative rhythms outside of the ethereal world of Pink Floyd. One such encounter occurred when Gilmour and Ringo Starr crossed paths in the late 1918s. What ought to have been a pleasant partnership between two great artists swiftly devolved into a creative conflict, bringing to light the significant differences in their character and aesthetic ideas. Imagine this: the Beatles' easygoing and mellow drummer, Ringo, who is renowned for his sense of humor and natural musicality, enters a studio anticipating a fluid and casual creative atmosphere. David Gilmour is a man across the room whose meticulousness and drive for perfection frequently left little opportunity for spontaneity. What started off as a thrilling adventure between two titans of rock turned into a confrontation between radically different approaches. Gilmour took an absolutely fanatical approach to the project, Every note and arrangement has to be painstakingly created, refined, and idealized. He saw music as a craft that required self-control and discipline. The essence of improvisation, however, was personified by Starr, who brought an organic, unplanned energy to the table. Gilmour, however, thought that this laid-back strategy verged on negligence. Every practice turned into an ego battle, with Starr arguing for spontaneity and Gilmour for refinement. The tension in the recording sessions increased. Starr felt constrained and micromanaged by Gilmour's unrelenting quest for accuracy. Gilmour's demands, in Starr's opinion, were not only intrusive, but also irreconcilable with the spirit of cooperation he cherished. Given that neither man was prepared to compromise on their vision, Gilmour viewed Starr's informal manner as a lack of seriousness and a carefree attitude that contrasted with his own strict work ethic. As a result, angry arguments became the norm. Their cooperation started to take shape as their arguments got more heated. Instead of inspiring something spectacular, the creative strain served as a wedge that drove them apart. Both men were disillusioned by the time the idea failed. While Gilmour viewed the encounter as a reminder of the difficulties of working outside of his meticulously regulated environment, Starr allegedly left with the impression that Gilmour's rigidity had made the process intolerable. Their dispute didn't become well known, but its effects persisted. For Gilmour, it highlighted the difficulties of leaving his Pink Floyd circle, where his need for perfection was accepted and appreciated. For Starr, it served as a warning that harmony is not always assured, even among legends, and a sharp contrast to the creative magic he had encountered with the Beatles. A more profound aspect of Gilmour was exposed during the altercation with Starr. His unwavering character was closely linked to his musical prowess. He became a master of his trade as a result, but it also kept people away from him who couldn't live up to his high expectations. Ultimately, the unsuccessful partnership served as evidence of the intricacies of brilliance and the interpersonal conflicts that even celebrities cannot avoid. A private life in disarray was hidden beneath the spotlight and soaring guitar solos. David Gilmour hardly ever let the world see this reality. His first marriage to Virginia Hazenbein, which started off as a hopeful and promising partnership, gradually fell apart due to the demands of his demanding work. Imagine this. Gilmour spent several evenings in the studio working on the complex album production. His wife and small children waited at home, sensing the void created by his absence. Gilmour believed that achieving musical perfection was unavoidable, but it came at an excruciatingly expensive price. The constant cycle of recording and touring had a negative impact. Virginia was left to handle the duties of raising their family by themselves while the rest of the world rejoiced in Pink Floyd's victories. With each sold-out show and late-night studio session, the emotional distance between them grew. Gilmour's marriage was clearly under stress as his responsibilities as a husband and father took a backseat to his career as a rock star. Their relationship became characterized by frequent arguments, driven by bitterness, unfulfilled expectations, and the constant demands of celebrity. Growing up in the Gilmour home was a mixed experience for their kids. On the one hand, they had a father who was adored by millions and whose music had endured through the decades. On the other hand, they had to deal with the difficulties of being the offspring of a guy who was frequently emotionally and physically absent. Imagine the bittersweet combination of longing and pride. Knowing that their father might miss another significant event in their life while they watch him perform for adoring fans. A watershed was reached when Gilmour's marriage ended in the late 1918s. It was more than just a relationship ending. It was a reckoning. The dissolution of his family made him face the sacrifices he had made throughout his life, which had been centered on the quest for artistic excellence. The quiet times following the divorce were filled with introspection and an opportunity to consider the question that had troubled him for a long time. Was the cost of achievement justified? The wounds from Gilmour's first marriage persisted even when he remarried and found stability and comfort with Polly Samson. They served as a reminder of the brittleness of equilibrium and the thin boundary between neglect and ambition. Even as he established a fresh life, the consequences of his previous transgressions influenced how he approached his family and his work. Although Gilmour's personal troubles were not exclusive to rock stars, they did highlight a sharp difference between the person behind closed doors and the person on stage. Fans perceived him as a calm, reflective musician whose songs appeared to come naturally to him, while his family saw a guy struggling with the fallout from his decisions. His narrative serves as a moving reminder that even the most well-known people struggle to balance their personal and professional life. As the long-running controversy surrounding Pink Floyd's tumultuous past is rekindled by Waters' admissions, Gilmour's legacy remains a tribute to both his brilliance and his humanity. Millions have been inspired by his guitar playing, but his path has been paved with conflict, jealousy, and the burden of expectations that few people could ever meet. Gilmour's tale is one of genius tempering by hardship, from his conflicts with Waters to his tense relationship with Barrett, and even his confrontations with Starr. It serves as a reminder that even the most well-known musicians are fundamentally human and have the same fears, goals, and challenges as everyone else. One thing is clear as the music industry considers Waters' remarks. Like the music he co-wrote, David Gilmour's narrative will enthrall, motivate, and spark discussion for many generations to come.